So, the God of Highschool has been airing recently, and as I'm very much in favor of webtoons being adapted into anime, I've been watching it, and I have really liked it so far. It's got great animation, and I like the characters a lot, but it also got me thinking about a surprisingly controversial topic, being overpowered characters. From what I've seen, most people kind of seem to say that it's a good thing when it's present in characters they like, and it's a bad thing when it's present in characters that they don't, cough cough Kirito. Sometimes I've seen people lightly touch on what OP characters add to a narrative, but I've never really seen them analyze how overpoweredness is implemented in said narrative, and what makes that OPness good or bad. And that's always been kind of annoying to me, because people are able to subconsciously realize when things are done well or poorly in narratives, even if they don't have the critical sense to consciously understand why. We study narratives to understand those reasons, but a lot of people just don't seem to consciously realize that OPness can have just as many intricate reasons it's good or bad as any other part of a narrative, beyond whether the OPness is contrived. But honestly, I could go on and on about how to implement OPness in a narrative for several more videos, so I'm just gonna get to the point. Basically, I think that just like a character's arc, a character's overpoweredness needs to fit into multiple phases, each phase using it a bit differently to be implemented correctly. And I think that the first 3 episodes of the God of Highschool, which are all that are out as I write this, do a pretty good job demonstrating a few very basic but very effective ways to handle setting up an OP character and the way it handles its protagonist, Jin Mori. So if you don't know, God of Highschool is a martial arts tournament anime, and that's literally all you need to know for this video. The show's not that complicated. But anyways, the 3 main tools the show uses to set up Jin as a badass are framing, feats, and personality. I'm gonna try to talk to each tool individually, but they all do such a good job building on and tying into each other that I'll probably have to touch upon the topics that I've already mostly explained while talking about the later topics. But anyways, first off there's feats, and I think that there are 2 main types of feats that can be implemented in any story. Grounded feats, which are feats so grounded in reality that the audience can fully understand how impressive it is without the show telling you anything about it. For instance, if you show someone cutting a mountain in half with no context, the viewer will still have a good idea of how impressive that is just by knowing what mountains are and that they tend to be pretty hard to damage. Feats like this are used in God of Highschool in scenes like the bike chase, wherein the audience's knowledge that motorcycles are really fast, combined with their knowledge that bikes tend to be slower due to people's inability to pedal fast enough to match the speed of an engine-powered motorcycle, makes the fact that Jin is able to keep up with a thief on a motorcycle very impressive. Even more so when you realize the motorcycle guy had a head start and that Jin was slowed down by crashing into and talking to Mira, but he still managed to keep up with the motorcycle. There's also scenes like the one in the arena where Jin and some of the other contestants beat up a bunch of randos taking part in the tournament, where the audience's knowledge not only of the fact that beating up someone is hard, but the fact that martial artists, which the randos are even tougher than most people, makes this impressive. Both of these do a good job making Jin seem powerful specifically because the audience understands, at least to a certain extent, how difficult these feats are to achieve. The other type of feat is basically the opposite, essentially being something removed from reality enough that the audience needs some information communicated to them to fully understand it. For instance, if you show someone blocking a laser blast with no context, that won't really register to the audience as impressive because there's nothing to indicate how powerful that blast is. Even if the bad guy spouts some nonsense like, "This laser is strong enough to destroy a planet!" it won't really resonate with the audience because people naturally have a really hard time visualizing things that don't have physical examples. Characters also tend to be similarly removed from reality, as the audience doesn't usually have a strong grasp on how strong they are, at least not without context. The show's job is to provide context that communicates to the audience how strong a character is, and one of the main ways shows do that is through the second method, framing. Framing is basically anything that's there to provide the viewer with a lens and perspective to view the events that are currently happening. For instance, in episode 1, there's a scene where these super buff karate guys are complaining about not being admitted to the titular martial arts tournament, the God of Highschool. This frames everyone who does participate in the tournament as super tough, seeing as they got into a tournament that even these guys, who seem to be as muscled as any person reasonably could be, couldn't get in. There are also lines spoken by the characters watching in the stands reacting to this guy's fighting, which do a great job of setting him up to be incredibly powerful, as by seeing what an everyday bystander thinks of the situation taking place, we can properly understand how crazy everything is in the context of the world. And if you're wondering why so many anime have characters reacting to fights going on, this is why. It's to properly frame the fights. But moments like the audience's reaction to this guy and one of the organizers saying that he's the one to beat, implying he might be the strongest character in the tournament, make it all the more impressive when Jim, the main character of the God of Highschool, Jim from The Office. But moments like these make it all the more impressive when Jin defeats him. And building up Jin as a badass also frames the organizers as OP because one of them already defeated Jin before the series even started. And since one of the other organizers claims to be even stronger than that organizer, he's framed as an even bigger threat than he already was just by being an organizer. And thus, Jin's quick and easy defeat of that organizer builds Jin up as a complete badass. But there's one more thing that elevates God of Highschool's portrayal of Jin as a badass to an even higher level, and that's his personality. Jin is a complete goofball. He likes food, jokes around, and generally doesn't take anything all that seriously. But here's the thing, because getting serious is so conflated with actually trying in pop culture, Jin's utter refusal to take things seriously implies that he doesn't need to try, making him seem all the more powerful. At first, this is just a tool to demonstrate that Jin is indeed a hell of a lot stronger than this guy. But as the show progresses, this tool paints an even more extreme picture of Jin's power. For instance, in episode 2, he interferes with another contestant's match because that contestant I keep talking about was kicking his opponent's ass too hard. But despite this being a giant rule violation, he does not care about the consequences, even when he's being led away from the arena by the organizers and will likely be disqualified. He isn't taking this situation seriously, so that communicates to the viewer that Jin is so powerful he doesn't need to care about the rules. And because it's made clear to the audience that Jin does want to participate in the tournament, this leads to an even greater impression of Jin's power. There are also some moments in some fights where Jin does things that are completely unnecessary just because he wants to. For instance, he pulls this contestant's pants down while they're fighting just for fun, and he takes the organizer's glasses off just for the hell of it before knocking him down and winning the match super nonchalantly. Needless to say, this all leaves a very distinct impression of Jin's ridiculous abilities on the viewer. But the bigger thing is that these scenes also manage to characterize Jin. Characters who are just badass with no other features get old pretty quickly, but by establishing Jin's strong personality, God of Highschool ensures the viewers will care about Jin even if the novelty of watching him be a badass wears off. To be honest, framing and feats are basically the default ways to show that a character is OP, but not only does the God of Highschool weave them together particularly well, but the way it includes personality in that, weaving? Quilt of OP character setup makes the God of Highschool a great example of how to make some fairly standard OP setup work particularly well. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content. Thanks and see ya. Also follow me on Twitter.